Ya, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. For our group, we will perform the whiteboard unit testing with Jest. Here are our group members. The first is Abdulati, Ali Hussein, and me, Muhammad Lamadin, and Troy Nugromuti. First, we are about to talk about the whiteboard unit testing, which will be explained by Troy. So, Troy, can you share?
The first is what is the white box testing. White box testing is a software testing technique in which internal structure, design, and coding software are tested to verify flow of input-output and to improve design, usability, and security. In the white box testing, code is visible to tester, so it also called a clear box testing, open box testing, transparent box testing, code-based testing, and a glass box testing. Second is what do you verify in white box testing? White box testing involves the testing of the software code for the following: internal security holes, broken or poorly structured path in the coding process, the flow of specific input through the code, expected output, the functionality of conditional loop, testing of each statement, object, and function on an individual basis. Next is how do you perform a white box testing? This is what testers do when they testing an application using the white box testing techniques. The first is understand the source code. The first thing a tester will often do is learn and understand the source code of the applications. Since the white box testing involves the testing of inner working of an application, the tester must be very knowledgeable in the programming language used in the application they are testing. Second is create test case and execute. The second basic step to white box testing involves testing the application source code for the proper flow and structure. One way is by writing more code to test the application source code. The tester will develop little tests for each process or series of the process in the application. This method requires that the tester must have intimate knowledge of the code and is often done by developers. Next is white box testing techniques. There are automated tools available to perform code coverage analysis. Below are the few coverage analysis techniques a box tester can use. The first is statement coverage. This technique requires every possible statement in the code to be tested at least once during the testing process of the software engineering. Second is branch coverage. This technique checks every possible path, if else, and other conditional loop of a software application. The other white box testing techniques are decision coverage, condition coverage, multiple condition coverage, finite state machine coverage, path coverage, control data flow testing, and data flow testing.
Advantages of white box testing. So one of the advantages of white box testing is the hidden errors can be found by code optimization. Second, the cases can be easily automated. The test goes through all the path of all the code path are covered. Also, testing can start early in system development life cycle, even if the GUI is not available. Next, disadvantages of white box testing. White box testing can be quite complex and expensive. Developers usually execute cases detested. Sorry, the white box testing by developer is not detailed, so it can lead to production errors. White box testing requires professional resource with a detailed understanding of programming and implementation. White box testing is time consuming. Bigger programming applications take the time to test fully. Next, what is Jest? So Jest is an open source JavaScript testing library from Facebook. It's also called delightful JavaScript testing. While Jest can be used to any JavaScript library, it shines when it comes to React and React Native. This is not surprise as both React and Jest come from Facebook. So we can shortcut that into 2 points. The first point is Jest is a library for testing JavaScript. Second point is it's an open source project maintained by by Facebook. It's especially well suited for React code testing. Also, it's not limited to that. It can test any JavaScript code. Now, why we use Jest? First, Jest is zero configuration. It just verifies the JavaScript environment using Just DOM and manages all the configuration inside the library. Second, it's faster, more reliable tests. One of the advantages of tests is speed. Just runs tests in parallel, which makes running the whole test suits so much faster. Also, you've got the possibility to use //watch and only run the test affected by your change in the editor. Also snapshot. So Just can perform snapshot testing. Just can capture snapshot of React tree or other serializable value to simplify.
It is explained by Troy. So Troy can just. Okay, so that's a brief explanation on what is the white box testing and what is Jest in general. And we're about to see on how to implement Jest in a real world project. Okay, so I will try to explain my project here. I will get to my VS Code here in a second. And at the first glance, it seems complicated. I didn't use any framework to build this. It is just a plain JavaScript and HTML and CSS and so on. But the main idea here is what makes it different is I used a webpack to build this one. So if you are wondering behind all of these stuffs, what is in front of it? The behind, of course, it's full of codes and so on. But how is the layout? So that's just like I want to give you something. So we first run the test development, which will open up the local server. It will open up on localhost, and the browser directly pops up like this. So all of those codes on VS Code produce this layout. So about this web application, I will explain it briefly about my personal project. This is a submission for decoding fundamental web apps. So to put it briefly, you got a doctor picture here, and the main functionality, one and only functionality in this application was you can search the province that you are aware of and see what how you can see how is the COVID effect on that province. So it's based on user input. And after that, we can see the top 3 global cases. First of all, we have United States, United Kingdom, and Brazil. And you here in the bottom here, you can see some kind of tips and tricks to protect your family during this COVID-19 era. And just to give you a brief demonstration there, let's say we input the Jawa Timur in here. So what's good about this project? It includes all the province in Indonesia since it connects with the third-party API. It is a government's. It was from a government API and it is a public, so all of the developers can access those API and literally do anything about that. And I decided to make it into a web application like this. And it is also not a case sensitive. In default, like the response from the government's API, it is case sensitive, but by the magic of JavaScript, it turns into not. So it still gives the same output, right? If I able to change it with Jawa Tengah, it will give a different data from the Jawa Timur, obviously. Okay, so that's a brief explanation about what application we are going to test. So going back to the main topic, we use Jest to test this JavaScript project. So first of all, when we include Jest, how do we make it right? So if you see on the terminal, that's our local server being run. So we will need to have a new command prompt. And this is the extension of Jest. Like if you are about to test the JavaScript, you have to make the extension like this. So it's the name of the file. You can literally name it whatever you want. And then you can, the format is .test.js. So how to test this, right? How to test this? It is just as simple as this, npm run test. Actually, for this last comment, you can put whatever you want as long as it matches with the package.json here, because test here is going to connect with Jest framework testing framework. And if I run this, then it will tell the application, it will tell the Jest that we are about to run testing process with Jest. So here's a quick example on what is this. So it is being run right now. It's executing the test cases here. And we have 4 test cases to be tested. So first of all, we check the Jawa Timur region and want to know about the COVID data. So it has been tested correctly. And lowercase input, just like I've demonstrated to you, it also passed. Check input that is not in area of Indonesia. We will talk about it as soon as we reach in the code. COVID data from 3 nations fetched properly. So if you see the 3 nations here, it's actually a default, right? So it's not like it has been sorted. It has been sorted from all nations, and oh, this is the highest one. This is the second highest. It's not like that. I decided to make it a default nation, so just to give it easier. So just make it easier. So all of those works properly, like all of the test cases passed. But how to do that, right? Because of course, when we first integrate Jest in our project, it is still empty. It is still empty. It has nothing. Let's see in detail about how we implement. So the output of the testing process is matched with as intended. So first of all, because this project connects with all of those files, right? The project, it has assets, components, all of those files needed to make this web application runs properly. Of course, we have to use npm, which is a node package manager, to import. Like for a comparison, you have a package for the Java. In Java programming language, you can import, you can do OP, but for this, we can use npm to make it easier. And there are some libraries to be used here. So if we are not using API as well, we are not using the npm, it will be hard. So first of all, we import. So all of these required things, it is importing process. So what does it mean? Lodash is actually a library to manage all of those arrays and objects. So since this API process, API output is as an object, we will need a Lodash library to handle it. So that's about Lodash and why we have to include node fetch, because as we know, fetch is a function in JavaScript ES6 syntax, which is going to be used to handle the request. Yeah, like when you are doing a Postman request, it is just like a make API call. So that's the default of it. But when we are about to integrate it, we are about to test it with Jest, we have to include node fetch, because yeah, it is a dependency that it should be included if we are about to test it with Jest. So what is this data source? Data source is the API call process. It's here. So if you can see, as you can see, the API is this link. So for example, if I click this one, it is just a bunch of API requests, API response. I mean, it has a lot of data. It is not readable for a human like us. So that's the fetch. That's the data source. That's the output of this data source. How can we do that? Because I put the module exports here. So we can import it in another file. And that file is in case.test.js, which is the file that we are going to test. So after we get all of those imports, I defined, like if we look at the test case area, of course we have, before testing process, we have to define the test cases. After that, we can decide what functions need to be in this specific file that is going to be tested, right? So to make it simple, I made two functions. I made the two functions which will be used on these test cases, which we'll talk about it later. But for check API nations and check API region, so these are the function that we need to call to make testing process available. So we define the result API first, and we call the data source get data by country, which is this method. And I'll close it fastly. Okay, so we have a better look on it. So since the output of this fetch is in a form of array, we want to go over that collection of array and we want to push it into a new array. Why? Because the output, as I've mentioned earlier, the array is just like this, which is not clean and clear what the data is talking about. So by having this a new function, we can define what is the default nation. Like this, of course, it includes Australia, Armenia, like all of the nations in the world, which we not really used it anyway. So we just want to know the data for the United States, United Kingdom, and Brazil. So that's the reason why we have to create a new array and return it as a result of calling this check API nations. Moving on to the check API region, actually the algorithm is all the same, but the different thing is I use this Lodash function, start case and camel case. So it is going to be not case sensitive. So whatever the input, if you write it in lowercase or uppercase, it doesn't matter. For the province, yeah, of course, if we are about to see the API request as well, these are the output of that fetch request. So yeah, based on the user input, we wouldn't need all of this because the user input only input one province. And yet the output of the API request, the API response, the API response gives you 33, like all of the province in Indonesia, which is kind of, it's not going to be used. So the way we filter it, we just accept the user input and we want to take specific data from all of these. Like for example, Jawa Timur, the user input Jawa Timur, then it will only gives you this particular line, this particular response. So it gives what user needs. So that's all about the check API region and check API nation. Now to enable this, like to give this displayed in the terminal, displayed in the command prompt, whatever we like to say, we have to define the test, and we expect to have the input and output desired for each test cases. So for example, the first test case is checking the Jawa Timur, check Jawa Timur to display COVID data for Jatim region. Of course, we have to call this API region, because that's why we need to create a new function so we can use it. So it will be reusable. Jawa Timur, then this is a promise data for each, because that data is still a bunch of it. And then for this element attributes province, it's based on the API response actually. The main thing here is, like the main concept here is, we put the value in this to be method with the API response. So that's it. And the Jawa Timur is the input from the user. That's about it. The algorithm for this second test case is the same, but we input the lowercase version of it. So it is totally the same. The thing is different with check input. That is not in area of Indonesia. Like, of course, New Zealand is not in Indonesia's province. So we expect it, and with the same algorithm, with the same matcher, this 2B matcher is, 2B is one of many matchers. So if we are about to look at the documentation of the test, there are a lot of matchers that we can use to test our program. Like to be null, to be undefined, to be defined. You have exceptions, you have arrays and iterables. There are a lot of it, but for this project, it only needs to be function. So that's 3 functions that we have discussed about that. And the last test case is about COVID data from 3 nations fetched properly. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we defined the default nations, which is going to be the United States, United Kingdom, and Brazil. Yeah, it is the same with the previous one, but since we are about to compare 2 arrays, default nations here is an array, and for this API response is also an array. In this one is a bunch of data, right? So we want to check if the API gives the response we intended. So we start with the index from 0, of course. The element 0, it is the API response. And then we checked if this API response has United States, has United Kingdom, has Brazil or not. To do that, we just need to do it in one line of code, which is, we will need to contain, which is different with to-be matchers, but there are still the same, there are the matchers. So I just use the different function there. to contains the default nations and the index of it. So it's just like the increment of the index. So by default, that's how you do it. That's how the case.test.js perform to enable the Jest testing so that our program is worked properly as intended. But by default, you will get to see that sometimes these these test cases is not displayed as well. So that's because by default it is verbose for the Jest configuration is set to false. So just to make a quick comparison here, if we save this package.json and we test it again, the testing process, it will, yeah, it will only tells you that the testing is complete. All testing is finished properly, but what kind of test did we perform will not be displayed here. So if you want to be more detailed of how, of what did you perform in unit testing here, you can set the verbose to the true. So that's it. You have a clear testing output. In case if the test case is failed, you can just go into the specific things and you want to fix it correctly, you want to fix it quickly as well. So that's about the fundamental of testing with Jest. And if you, yeah, for this transform ignore patterns, which is still included in Jest, yeah, it is just the folder that you want to ignore. Of course, we don't need node modules to be tested. Yeah. We just need to test the dependency of node modules, not the node modules itself. Because if you are about to test the node modules directly, I assume that it will be time consuming, which is not good for our testing process, especially when our application is very simple. So it gives you a time, the snapshots as well, 0 total. The time is 2 seconds. So for these 4 test cases, it only takes estimated 3 seconds. Yeah. So it ran properly. And if you go to our website again, oh yeah, you can do Java Barat, for example. It will give you the output, the Jawa Timur. And what if we New Zealand? It will not be displayed, of course. So that's the parameter of the testing process there. The testing process matches with the way application gives output to the user. So that's all for the white box testing and how to test your application with Jest. I hope this helps someone out there, and yeah, we can perform unit testing with JavaScript, especially with JavaScript with Jest. And it is very easy and very simple. So I think that's all from our group. Thank you for watching. See you next time.